The 9 paradoxes of farm to fork. At this time, Europe is reviewing its food system and proposing a strategy for transitioning to more sustainable production. It is called Farm to Fork, and it is part of a larger and more complex plan called the Green Deal. This project contains ambitious and far-reaching targets, but there are also a few paradoxes, stemming from the preconception that meat is not sustainable for the environment nor our health. Let's start with a premise. Livestock farms today are very different from once upon a time. They have evolved by learning to use innovation, needing fewer resources and becoming more efficient. But few people are aware of this evolution because over the past decades, farms, once widespread across our continent, have declined dramatically. Today's generation have never experienced the agricultural and livestock world close up, and they often have an idyllic vision of animal farming. The result? We often talk about agriculture and animal husbandry from an urban perspective, far removed from the reality of livestock production and its natural cycles. This is why the Farm to Fork strategy presents paradoxes. Paradox number 1. Nutrition. Science states this clearly. From prehistoric times till today, consumption of animal proteins favors the development of the human brain because, from a nutritional point of view, animal proteins are the most efficient. In a few calories, we find all 9 essential amino acids, 16 vitamins and minerals, and 10 bioactive compounds. In other words, if we human beings have become the intelligent and evolved beings of today, we owe it in large part to the omnivorous diet and the nutritious aspects of foods of animal origin. Paradox number 2. Land use. It is widely believed that livestock takes valuable land away from crops for human consumption, but that's not true at all. In Europe, the land used for farming and grazing has remained almost constant over the last 60 years, while the population has grown by over 125 million individuals, and the average lifespan has lengthened by about 10 years, with a life expectancy of almost 80 years of age. Animals are naturally complementary to human life because 86% of their diet is based on plant parts rich in cellulose such as crop residues, grass, and hay, which are not digestible by people and which are converted into proteins with a high biological value. Paradox number 3. The environment. Where there is livestock production, there are people who are invested in protecting the land, avoiding its abandonment, degradation, hydrogeological instability, and loss of biodiversity. Meat is increasingly the scapegoat when it comes to CO2 emissions. But in Europe, livestock raised to produce meat are responsible for 7.2% of greenhouse gas emissions, which are already more efficient today than the world average of 14.5%. Where does the remaining 85 to 90% come from? Much of global warming comes from the use of fossil fuels to produce energy in industry, the residential sector, and transport. A return flight from Rome to Brussels emits more CO2 per passenger than moderate consumption of meat for a whole year for that same person. Paradox number 4. Economy. The Farm to Fork strategy hints at a progressive downsizing of the European livestock sector. This could lead to importing meat from other countries, where production has a greater impact on the climate. Emissions know no boundaries, so global air pollution would increase. And the economic impact of imports also needs to be accounted for. Furthermore, the livestock sector is interconnected with dozens of other sectors. Reducing this sector also means putting other sectors in crisis. Paradox number 5. Animal welfare. European legislation on animal welfare is one of the most advanced and comprehensive in the world. If we stopped raising livestock in Europe and imported meat from other countries, we would have to ask ourselves, would animal welfare be protected? Paradox number 6. Fertilizers. The European Commission plans to cut fertilizers by 20% and to increase organic production by 25% by 2030. But to grow organic vegetables, livestock is needed. Manure allows the soil to be fertilized without the use of chemical fertilizers. Less livestock means less natural fertilizers, more chemicals, and more desertification. Paradox number 7. Employment. On average, each livestock farm guarantees 7 jobs in rural areas. Without farms, and with the consequent depopulation of agricultural areas, new job losses would occur. Paradox 8. Culinary and cultural heritage. The goal of the Farm to Fork strategy is to create shorter supply chains and strengthen the resilience of regional food systems, such as geographical indications. This objective clashes with the globalization of ultra-processed and synthetic food made with no territorial identity or cultural heritage. Paradox number 9. Food security. With the COVID-19 crisis, the issue of food security is once again in Europe's headlines. We are all quite suddenly more vulnerable. According to the FAO, over the next 30 years we will have to feed over 2 billion more people. Furthermore, in 2050, about 70% of the world's population will live in cities and urban areas, and a small percentage of the population will have to manage agricultural production. What would happen if animal production and therefore related agricultural activity continued to reduce? We would have less food to eat, and this would generate social chaos. The debate right now seems to be riding an emotional wave, and this is very dangerous. Only science can help us understand how to truly organize sustainable production on a global scale, but one that guarantees food for all. Faced with this scenario, it is more reasonable to appreciate and support livestock farms rather than denigrate them. For these reasons, we appeal to the European institutions. Europe has a great opportunity to use the Green Deal to appreciate the progress made by its agricultural and livestock systems. It would be unforgivable to waste this advantage. The future lies in innovation and technology to produce more with fewer resources. The livestock system is ready to play its role. We ask the European institutions to involve in the decision-making process all professionals and experts in the sector who, without ideologies but with their own skills, can facilitate the transition towards a balance between environmental and economic sustainability.